I wanted to go back to what boutique meant, bespoke, but boutique doesn't just mean small and crappy. We have all the technology and all that, but I wanted it to feel special, when in an industry where tech is trying to take us out with AI and all this garbage. I wanted to do something where your clients feel special.
Balance isn't about standing still. It's not about splitting time perfectly between work and life. That's a myth. Real balance is momentum. It's knowing when to lean in, when to step back, and how to stay in control when everything is moving fast. Brian Manning built his success by rejecting the outdated idea of balance and embracing something better, alignment. The ability to go all in on big goals without losing what matters most. This is Balance in Motion, a new way of thinking, a new way of living. Because the people who achieve the most aren't looking for balance, they're mastering the flow. Let's get into it.
Welcome, everyone. It's our Balance in Motion podcast. Ecstatic to be here today. We have a great friend of ours, Jeff Plous. I've actually wanted to interview Jeff for quite a while. So, Jeff, I'm ecstatic to have you here to talk with you today. But before we get into that, I just want to introduce Jeff. I love this one. I got Jeff's bio. Jeff says his motto is to treat every client like there is only client. I would actually have to agree with that motto. I've seen it firsthand. He's consistently top 10 agent in Denver and the surrounding area. Born and raised in downtown Chicago, which I love. I actually just got back from Chicago yesterday. Great city. Moved to Colorado 2002. Car obsessed guy. That's actually how I met Jeff in the first place, was from our car obsessions. Married, 2 kids, lives in the Sloan's Lake neighborhood of Denver. And Jeff Plous, welcome to the show. We're stoked to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My
Excited
pleasure. So I always like to start by just asking and learning more, just like how it all started. Maybe you could go back to the beginning of, how'd you get started into this? Were you an entrepreneur from the beginning, first business? Let's go all the way back to the beginning and learn about how it started.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. I've always loved real estate. When I was a kid, my dad got into lofts kind of before there was really a term for it. Today, we'd call them like raw lofts or conversion buildings. But back then, it was almost like live work spaces where, the fire department could come through at any time and you had to hide the beds kind of thing. But my dad was really into this idea of these big old raw spaces and what you could do with them. And clearly my parents were divorced, but he'd rent like 10,000 square feet of an old warehouse in like different up and coming now really trendy neighborhoods in Chicago. And you'd get these like wild spaces with like 20-foot ceilings and concrete floors. And we'd move in. And back then you were renting these spaces for like $1,000 a month. And you kind of got to do anything you wanted. And so my dad would say to me when I was like 9, 10 years old, like, where do you want the bedrooms to be? Where do you want the bathrooms to be? And I would come up with these ideas and they'd get stranger and stranger with every place we lived or just whatever our ideas were. And so it was kind of like it was like adult or like life-size Legos, you could say. I made my dad's bedroom swing from the heavy timber ceiling. So there were stairs that came up to a platform and the whole room could be swung if you wanted. Or the living room, the living room in one of the places was on heavy casters, the way we designed it. So you could unplug it because there was an elevator that was large enough to bring a car up. And so we could slide, because there's an old brewery in the building. So you could slide the living room out of the way to bring a car project in. And then we'd work on cars through the winter because my dad and I restored cars together as a kid. So you had all these weird things that you were doing that, clearly probably weren't to code or legal, but it was very fun and interesting. And so I've always had this fascination with design. I was going to Purdue my first 2 years of school, and I was actually a computer technology major at the time, but I took an architecture class, like a intro to architecture, and it was just more or less the history of architecture is what it was. And it just got me really into thinking about like Mies van der Rohe and Frank Lloyd Wright and just all these other incredible works. And I started thinking, well, maybe this is where I want to go. And my grandfather told me I had to go to business school, so he kind of talked me out of being an architect. He also talked me out of being a car journalist. But and then, my best friend and I came out to visit Colorado May 26th, 2002. We were driving into Boulder to visit some of my cousins, saw the mountains, and we both looked at each other and said, transferring. And, you know, came here. I double majored at CU in finance and real estate. And it's just always been my obsession ever since. I always wanted to be a developer. I worked for an ultra custom builder in Chicago for a few different summers doing punch work and just really seeing the luxury side of things. Worked for Centex Homes out of college, where I was their only salesperson who never sold anything because the community they put me at was the wrong community for the neighborhood. It's a whole thing. And then I was kind of trying to figure out my life and met my old managing broker, Lydia Lynn, and she convinced me to become a realtor, even though I thought they were cheesy. I didn't want to be one. And yeah, so in the end, she talked me into being a realtor. Within the first 2, 3 years, I was top in the office. Within 5, one of the top in the metro area. And then over the last like close to decade, I've been in the top, I've been number 1 to number 5 pretty consistently for like out of 20,000 plus agents. And in the interim, I've also built 45 or so doors
Oh,
as a developer.
that's amazing. So I'm curious, a couple of things. So really your first foray kind of in like the eye for real estate and design was in these lofts. Did you just have kind of like a ability, creative freedom? I mean, dad was just like, okay, here's our space. Go with it.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. My mom was the world of rules, and my
Yep.
dad was the world of no rules. So my dad was the sort of person who didn't understand the word no. He owned a commercial TV store, and he
Mhm.
just didn't operate in normal society at all. And so, and he was the sort of salesperson that wasn't salesy, but he could, he definitely was the kind of person that could sell ketchup popsicles to a woman wearing white gloves.
Yep.
But not like in that like used car kind of way. He was just personable and all of that. And I think it kind of is in me because of that. It's just the way he talked to people, the way he could match personalities without knowing it. He was sort of a chameleon, even when he wasn't trying to be. But he just didn't really have rules, and he always liked to foster creativity. If I told my dad I was bored, if I said the word bored, it was a swear word in our house. He once, I told him I was bored. He pulled a TV out of the workshop, from the store, put it on a workbench, and said, "This TV works. Take it apart, put it back together. It better work when you're done." And I'm like, okay, being a, little like 11, 12-year-old. And I took it apart, and he forgot to tell me about old tube TVs had what's called a yoke on the
Yep.
back. It's sort of like a flash. It holds a charge. And so when you grab it to pull it off, it shocks the living hell out of you. And he turned to me and he said, "You'll never say the word bored again, will you?" And I make my dad sound kind of like a hard ass, but he really wasn't. He was the most
Yep.
kind, sweet, gentle person. But when you're in his house, there really weren't any rules other than I'll treat you as old as you act. So any weird idea I came up with, he's like, "Well, let's see if we can figure out how to make that happen."
Yep.
And that's what we would do, spend our weekends doing. We're
That's
playing with
amazing.
cars and building weird, funky houses that most people would have walked into and thought my dad was insane. It was like Pee Wee's Playhouse.
And I would say, I mean, I think you have one of the strongest work ethics of anyone I've ever met, which we'll talk about in a moment because I just think balance is such bullshit and hence the strong work ethic. But do you think that started from, your dad's house? I mean, it sounds like he was a hard worker,
No,
never sad. Where did it come from?
my dad really wasn't a hard worker. He was more
Okay.
of a dreamer. He was the person who dreamt up unique
Mm.
ideas, but he was a terrible businessman throughout his career. Really abysmal. But my grandfather was always my hero in that sense. My grandpa died when he was 101 years old. He grew up in East Chicago, Indiana. He had polio, so he couldn't go to World War II. So he built the blast furnaces for Inland Steel during as his war effort. And then he owned a an office supply store in East Chicago that sold to all the mills and everything. And I mean, he kind of worked until his late 80s, not because he had to, but because he's like if you don't work, you die. And then even when he did finally sell the store because East Chicago kind of crumbled as a city, finally, he started trading stocks. And even when he couldn't hear anymore, he'd call his stock trader and and just yell his orders into the phone and hang up because he couldn't hear anything. And but he was, he prioritized family. He paid for everything, was education first, so he paid for college for me. He was really that kind of person that, you're nothing without an education. He did force me to go to business school, which was a whole thing, but his work ethic, anyone in my family can tell you he was really the patriarch of our family, and he really instilled that desire to just work my butt off my entire life. And my mom always pushed me in that direction as well.
That's so cool. And I mean, you've accomplished some really great, amazing stuff with your business. Was there a time where you just saw everything shift from just being, the realtor that's just kind of doing deals here and there to really building a business out of it?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a realtor, if you're going to really make a go of it, it can take 3 to 5 years as a good run up to really get there, to kind of work past just the friends and family model that a lot of people have or start with, because you sell and help, you work with the people around you. And it was a real struggle the first few years. I wasn't really sure I was into it, but it kind of just, I don't know, probably around the time that I started building my first development, it kind of started to all click into place. And I met my now wife in 2013. And I think around then is where I was doing okay, but it kind of switched into that next gear. I think she focused me a bit.
Yeah, got it. And then I just think there's always this kind of like discipline and chaos, not even only in real estate, any high producing person that's running a business, you have this, trying to really sort out this discipline and chaos. There's so much unpredictability in the world of real estate as well on a
It's terrifying. Yeah.
daily basis. So how do you manage that? Because like you said, it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, early on, I used to literally when I had nothing to do. I used to sit around. I'd write. I had like it's hard to see, but my entire wall behind me is whiteboard paint, and I've always done whiteboards. I need to visualize things, but I used to write notes to myself all the time: short-term loss, long-term gain, and I would like literally write that over and over again and repeat it to myself. And especially early on, I would I didn't I wasn't as social as I would have liked to have been. I gave up on a lot of different things, or I pushed off a lot of things because I was trying to put work first because I wanted to achieve something. And my old business partner and mentor, for better or worse, I always tell this story. When we partnered for my first development, which was a 7-unit townhome development, and he his name's Paul Stan. He built Waterside Lofts, Palace Lofts, Hotel Teatro, Clayton Lane. He built Epcot Center for Disney. And he was significantly older than me. He didn't have kids. He didn't have a spouse. And he was super OCD. He passed away earlier this year as well. But he's like, I'm going to make something of you. He was from Detroit, real gruff guy. And I was like, okay, whatever, old man. And we started working together. And because of his OCD, he called me every single day for 360 days straight at 4:30 a.m. And I was still in the phase of life in my kind of later 20s of going out late and getting up late. And but he'd call me and I had to answer. He'd keep calling, and I'd sit up. Am I allowed to swear on this? It sounds like
Yeah,
I
yeah, of
can.
course you can.
I would I'd sit up in bed and hello, and he'd go, get the fuck up and get the fuck to work, and then he'd hang up on me every day, 360 days straight. And I think it was sort of the thing that I needed. It kind of kicked me in the butt, and I started wanting to do better and be better. In fact, even when we were doing our first development together, he started making fun of, in his weird way, like the things that I didn't know about construction. And I said, fine, I'll prove you wrong. And I went back to CSU and did an accelerated construction management program. So I filled in the gaps. And then I came back and he's like, oh, someone thinks they know something now. It was always, he was always kind of pushing me in this weird way to get better. Again, he was a very polarizing person, but he pushed me, and you know, I
Yeah.
think that gave me that extra push that I needed to sort of create probably push me out of balance and be more in the line of obsessive about my work.
Yeah. I mean, the purpose of this podcast is I just think balance is such bullshit. As I've always said, it's like the pendulum is shifting back and forth. And, when it's on one side, it's all work. The other side, it's all personal, but it just never sits in the middle. And I feel like for
No,
most of us, it's always pinned on like the work side, most of it.
if you want mediocre results, do mediocre work. And I know it's like my uncle, who's another one of my heroes. He has this like thing on his desk in his office at the company he owns, and it says, "Why be half a success when you can be a complete failure?" And I always love that, you know, that negativity of it all. And it's true though. Like, in other words, be a complete success. Don't be don't
Yep.
don't do it. Don't half-ass anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so your CU accelerated construction program, do you still find yourself to be a ferocious learner like that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it changes. I obsess over different things now.
Mhm.
The way that my first development came about is one of my best friends, we were roommates, and the city had just gone through Blueprint Denver, so the zoning had changed throughout the city. And we were arguing over what UMX3 zoning could be with a 6250 lot, a normal 6,250 square foot lot, which is a normal double lot in the city. And I said, no, you can only do a duplex. He said, I don't know. With the new rules, I think you could do a little bit more. And again, to prove him wrong, I stayed up all night and I read the code cover to cover, started teaching myself SketchUp and drawing a building based on the code. And I figured out I was wrong, but he didn't even realize how right he was. And I drew a 7-unit townhome development that fit on that, which kind of accidentally turned into what slat homes are called now. So
Wow. Nice. That's awesome.
at the time, we thought it was a really groundbreaking idea. Now I wonder,
Right.
there's too many of them. But we were
Yep.
the first. It was the most unique idea.
I like it. And in if we look at like your day to day, do you have any systems that you use to help you breathe? I mean, it's, you manage a lot, your calendar, personal life, and anything you're doing is just kind of help manage all this.
Yeah. So up until last year, I've been doing over 70 million in personal business for a number of years now. And up until last year, I still refused to hire an assistant. And to put that in perspective, that's anywhere from, I mean, without an assistant, the most I've sold in a year was 121 homes, which was, I think I lost my mind that year. Earlier in the year last year, Olivia Talheim, who is now my assistant, she had reached out to me and she's like, "You need an assistant." And I was like, "No, no, I've never had one." But it was kind of just the right timing. And she convinced me of it. And she was right. Thinking back, my kids are now 6 and 9, and they were starting to call me guy on phone instead of dad. So I wanted to have, I mean, I realized that I will never have true balance, but I needed to be able to take a weekend off and see my kids, or like I'm going to Mexico for fall break with the kids this weekend. And I needed to be able to do that without, you know, freaking out the whole time or not being able to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And so having an assistant, Olivia's been a lifesaver. I don't think I could do it without her now. And like everyone who finally gets an assistant says, like, I wish I'd done it sooner.
Mhm.
At the same time, I don't, because I think everything is a muscle, right? So I used to like even installing my own signs because it forced me to do a final check on the house. I liked entering everything into the MLS so that I knew exactly how the MLS was changing, so that you don't lose knowledge of systems, things
Mhm.
like that. So you're not reliant on anyone. I also always used to say, like, don't pay someone to do something you can do yourself. But there comes a point where you you do have to find balance. But I do think the people who are doing like 5 million a year and have like an assistant and a TC and all that stuff, maybe you could hold off a few years until you level up a few times.
Yeah. I remember when I first met you, this is several years ago,
Yeah.
and I was asking about your team. And I just assumed based on the volume that you did, you had a team, and you're like, no, it's just me. I think you said
Yeah.
you had someone that helped to handle compliance. review
Yep,
of the
I have,
file. That
we
was
have a
it.
an attorney who runs compliance for us once I
Yeah,
and that only was once I opened the brokerage,
right.
I wanted to make sure that everyone's files were clean, and so we have a back end for that because,
Mhm.
you know, I know that's one thing it'd be like me trying to do my own taxes, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. So how does Olivia impact your life now? And you're everyone's resistant to bring someone in, which I get, and I agree with you. I mean, I
Yeah,
processed all my own mortgages forever because I didn't want to turn over that responsibility. As part of it's just fear of someone else making a mistake,
yep, absolutely.
like tarnishing your reputation. But then you realize like there's the only real way to get any kind of personal life or flow is to really enlist other people to now support the whole system. So
Yeah.
how does she help you now?
Kind of everything. She manages my calendar. She's got schedules showings for me. I mean, when my mom was dying last year, she was able to basically run my business for me. While because I had to spend so much time in Chicago, and she's allowed me to have weekends off when I need them. It's just a collaborative effort to manage some of these deals. She helps with project management of all the updates we do to a lot of our listings to make them just right. She does some of the marketing efforts that I've always thought of doing but never had the time to. We just kind of put these pieces together in the puzzle, and
Yeah.
it just seems to work. It's been a good fit because we're both sort of type I wouldn't say I'm necessarily truly type A, but I'm the sort of person that is like, if you start something, you finish it.
Mhm.
And we're both sort of that mindset. And so, yeah, we both just like to start and finish projects.
Nice. I love that she reached out to you and convinced
Mhm.
you to hire an assistant. I've never heard that before. Of everyone I talked to, you're the first person that had someone reach out to you. Usually it's the other way around. Uh,
I've had other people reach out to me asking if I needed an assistant, and I always told them nah. But Olivia was a little bit more persistent, and she was kind of like, she's like, I want to work for the best, so I'm gonna have to put myself out there, is what she's told me.
nice. That's awesome. And when it all feels, heavy and you're just cooked mentally, because it's hard. It's taxing to
Yeah,
run a business. What do you do? Do you just power through it? Do you step away and get a break? How do you manage that part?
I I have to I'm there's the two type of people, the people who have their inboxes to zero all the time, and the people who have like my wife who has like, I don't know, several 100,000 unread emails. I have to zero everything out at all times. It's the only way my anxiety can be acceptable.
Mhm.
But I force myself, like, after this, if I have a chance, I go on runs every day since I live right on Sloan's Lake. It's a nice 3-mile run, and I need that. I need something that is I don't have my phone with me. I listen to a podcast. I let my mind run, and I've realized, I'm into my mid-40s now. I don't wanna die early. I have to work on my stress levels, and I try really hard not to take things as personally as I used to.
Mhm. Yeah. And you kind of strike me as someone that like you just seem like you work really well under pressure. I mean, if you sell 121 homes in a year with no assistance,
Yeah.
you seem to really flourish under pressure. But I mean, then there's this balance of flourishing under pressure and
Yeah.
burnout. So is it still just the runs
Yeah.
that helps you there?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Burnout is always looming for me. So I try really hard to kinda get to that edge and try to walk it back. There's another motto that I used to write to myself all the time: "Do one thing, do it well, then do another." And so, because otherwise I get too overwhelmed. I have to do one thing at a time.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I do well under pressure, but I try not to have fire drills. I try to very much plan my life far in advance. I don't like doing things last minute. So, yeah, I try very hard. Planning is a big part of the way that I work.
Yep.
Yeah. And then with this year in January, we brought on Kelly Reed came on as a minority partner in the company. And so we're changing kind of the way everything looks and the way that we do things, and some of our systems, but mostly just our presentation of things. She's kind of bringing that piece together. and that takes a weight off my shoulders as well. And so we've really worked well together, and it's been a great change this year.
Yeah, I was excited to see that. You all are you
Yeah,
complement each other very well. It's an incredible
yeah,
partnership. And sometimes I think people come together to pool resources or whatever the reason is, but you all complement each other just extremely well. It's a great yin and yang for sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I've always found that a little bit like my dad. I always like to take on a challenge, conquer it, and then I need something else to do.
Yep. Got it. Anything big you're working on now, or what are you most excited about right now going into the future?
God, it's such a it's such a unique market right now. I'm really just trying to ride this out a little bit and find a way, continue to keep our systems in place. We're really trying to build, Hatch. I opened it in 2020 because I kind of going back a little bit here. I opened Hatch as its own brokerage in 2020 because I wanted to go the opposite way of all the big brokerages that seemed to just be trying to take on every agent they could, leaning hard into technology. And every single agency I met with kept saying, "This is how we'll get you more business." Well, finding more business was never my problem. I wanted to find ways to help my clients more. And that's really a big part of my business is how do we help our clients more? And when we do that, you'll naturally get clients because they're always happy with your work. The business will find you. And I decided to just start my own brokerage and train other agents to work that way as well. But kind of, I wanted to go back to what boutique meant, bespoke, but boutique. It doesn't just mean small and crappy. We have all the technology and all that, but I wanted it to feel special, in an industry where tech is trying to take us out with AI and all this garbage. I wanted to do something where your clients feel special. And if someone wants to order McDonald's off of a kiosk, that's great. There are brokerages for that, services for that. Have at it. Those aren't my clients. They never will be.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the thing I guess I'm most excited about is watching the industry change and dealing with, AI coming on into the world and other technology. And you're seeing Compass buy every major brokerage until there's just one giant Borg. And we're going to just be outside of that, the outsiders trying to do old school real estate in a modern world.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, levels of service will never get old. AI will never replace customer service. It just can't. When you build your
Yeah.
business, the foundation is off of customer service and just really caring for people and serving their
Yeah.
needs. Technology just can't replace that. It can do a lot, but it can't replace that.
Yep. And I want to do it in a way that doesn't, where I'm not being a dick. There's
Right.
too many people out there that talk down to other agents or they think that if they bully people around, this all comes around. We're all gonna see each other again on another deal, you know?
Yep. I love it. Wonderful. Well, Jeff, I'm just really appreciative of you carving time out of your schedule to spend this with us today. I know you're getting ready to go on vacation and time is valuable. So thank you so much for being here with us today and willingness to share about who you are and what you do. And just thank you.